that contain foreign-made components, and that they didn't know about that. And some companies, they ignore our public reports because those are major American companies, which I showed you in the previous slides. And they say that we are a big company, and your public critique does not affect us because we work and we earn money. So in our report, we presented the recommendations which provide for the fact that the countries, the jurisdictions of these companies have to put pressure on these companies so that they track their technologies so that they do not make their way into Russia, because now there is no legislation, no prohibitions. They are emerging, but not at that serious level. And in my opinion, from my side, that is all. I would like to add that, Anna, thank you very much that you mentioned that we have been dealing with this since 2014, and we were one of the first organizations to study Shaheeds. And back then, that publication about the Iranian Shaheed drones was published in Austrian Journal, and it was sensational because it was surprising that Iranian Shaheeds contained 90% of Western components, American-made components, and in Kinjal missiles, there is a big percentage of Western-made components. And we have already publicized a lot of reports, and the finding is the same, that they contain Western-made components. And I would like to explain on the behalf of our analytical organization our conclusion. So Iran has been sanctioned for decades, and it has forged the supply chain of critical technologies, and it is very often illicit, and they provide critical components to run what it needs. Those are different entities. They are able to register their companies. They are managing to make transactions, and Russia learns this from Iran. And our partner countries have to make every effort to overcome this and help us to halt Russian war machine. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Olena, for your incredibly important work. And I have several questions, and we have another 4 speakers, and we have the representatives of different diplomatic institutions, and we will give the floor to the journalists. And I know that you presented one of your reports in the Congress in the USA, and I remember the reaction of some of the American companies and the feeling of necessity of synchronization between the Western countries in order to strengthen sanctions policy, which is our priority. And when you look at the number of 54% of components which are critical for military needs of Russia, and so we were not allowed to hit Russian targets on their territory. And in the meantime, Russia was building its capacity to target Ukraine thanks to the Western components. So it is very important to continue this work, to stay the course, and to convince our partners who say that we want Ukraine to win, but they do not make any effort, which does not reflect the reality. And now I would like to give the floor to Ahiia Zahrebelska. the head of the minimization of corruption risks in sanctions policy in the National Agency on Corruption Prevention. And she has the portal of Sanctions, which was part of National Agency of Corruption Prevention, and now it forms the part of the Defense Intelligence of Ukraine. And now it is very important to understand our priorities, because it was a good register of sponsors of the war and about the measures taken against them. And we have already heard from Olena that sanctions, they are important, but they are insufficient, because every time they were reviewed, but at the very beginning of the full-fledged invasion, we were promised that sanctions would be hellish, and we know that the sanctions could have prevented the full-scale invasion, but it did not. And this is one of the key findings. And despite of the China's actions, the West could have drawn conclusions. And now I'm giving the floor to Ahiia. Thank you very much for your work. And from your own experience, if we look at the sanctions policy, and now we are hearing some news about the new sanctions package, and they are trying to supplement the list, but Russia has displayed their ability to adjust to sanctions, whether it concerns banking or anything else. So could you provide us with your findings, with your results, and what should we do more in order to achieve better results? Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank our armed forces of Ukraine, because due to their work, we are here, and I would like to thank everyone who pays the highest price for this. And this data that we can use today, we might not be able to talk about these people for the nearest decades, but what they are doing on a daily basis, so that we can research the Russian military complex, represents their being heroic. And I would like to thank the representatives of the embassies, because we have made a great job with you, but we can do more, and we have to do more. And it is not that much about Ukraine, it is about the whole world, because today the aggressors decided that we are so weak, and they are so strong that they can doubt core values which the humanity cherished all the time, that they can undermine the global order which provided us peaceful life on Earth all the time. And I'm very grateful to the American people for their new sanctions package, and our sanctions team was very happy yesterday. And our today's research and our future work is our response. And it is not just the response for all of us today, but this is for the response for the freedom of the future generations, because it is not about what is happening today or in 2027, 2023, but this is about 2050, 2090. This is about the life of our grandchildren and what they will say about us. I would like to thank NATO for their tremendous work, because we can see hundreds of components, tens of companies, globally known companies, and we know how these jurisdictions work, the Central Asia, the countries of the Pacific region, the countries of the Middle East, components, machines, spare parts, tools, everything is making way into Russia. And for some, those are some codes, bank transactions, and for Ukraine, those are thrones. And every delivery is a coffin for Ukraine. This is not just a number. This is about people who have their families. And Olena has presented the report in a great way. You will be able to learn it in a better way. And I would like to add what this report lacks. Maybe this is the teaser for the further research. To Titan, I call it the gold of Russian aggression. 50% of the Russian fighter jets is represented by Titan. The engines, the cameras, all other components, we can enlist them for a long time, and 45% Titan is easier than steel. And without this, Russian fighter jets wouldn't be able to kill people without titanium. And we can talk not just about fighter jets. If we talk about Caliber or Kinjal missiles, they are made of titanium 50%, and the democratic world creates life of titanium. They create cardio stimulators, and Russia creates death thanks to titanium. And titanium is involved in every Russian war crime. We can call it the metal of the endless war. And lots of you can say that, yes, it is very difficult. There are no response. There is no silver bullet. And a lot of companies produce a lot of titanium not to cover their needs, but also to be one of the major suppliers of titanium in the world. And this is the journey. This is a strategy, the tactics. But we Ukrainians, we are used to hearing the word impossible, and now when we hear this word we say and we continue doing these impossible things. And very often we say that we have to eat the elephant by different parts, and the titanium raw material is critical for Russia in this war, and it does not produce it in sufficient amount in order to cover their needs. That is why it imports titanium. And today I would like to propose you one part that we can eat Russian war machine which tortures Ukraine. The Australian company Austrian Petingas, the Austrian supplier of titanium raw material for Russian fighter jets, which contain 50% of titanium, for Russian missiles, which contain 50-70% of titanium. And I think that we can start from this and then move forward. And our today's research, NAKO's research, I would like us to see not only sanctions, and Anna has the point. Yes, we understand that sanctions, they are not silver bullets. It is not just about new export control measures, yet they are important. We would like to see more enforcement rules, more compliance, more monitoring control concerning the compliance with sanctions. Our objective is the world to enforce these sanctions and to be adhered in the whole world. And the USA new sanctions package demonstrate that we have the instruments. We need the political will to act jointly, to exchange data, because every one of us has a small piece of a big picture, and we are trying to do something with this piece. But if all the countries join these pieces, we can create a bigger picture. We can exchange ideas. We can respond quickly. We can treat our diseases with good medicine and move further in our research. And I think that Russian war gold, this medal of endless war, has to be one of the next point that we have to deal with. Thank you very much, Anna, for this event. Thank you, NAKO. And now I'm very grateful for the analysis of the sanctions policy and everything concerning titanium. And the restriction of access to titanium is the restriction of the access for Russian fighter jets, taking into account the dependence of the Russian military industry on titanium. And I think that this Austrian company should have been under sanctions pressure as well. And Olena has clearly mentioned CNC machines. And now I would like to give the floor to Denis Hutik, the advisor of the Economic Security Council of Ukraine, because their think analyzed the fact how CNC machines help to produce new components, foreign-made machines, and because there's a shift, a transition from using now Western-made countries such as Japan, European countries, to China. And it only testifies that China, which provides not only chips to Russia, which constitutes not just the country which provides Russia with necessary components, but we can see that China provides them with the necessary machines and feeds the Russian war machine against Ukraine. And the recent statement of President of Ukraine against China is a bit brisk but fair, that China was trying to disrupt the peace summit in Switzerland, and China does not support Ukraine's vision and provides electronics machines to Russia, and it is a signal of their stance. So Denis, I'm giving the floor to you, and please present your findings, and maybe you will provide us with the announcements on what your organization is focused now, because now it is very important to convey to our international partners in the run-up to this summit in Washington, because they need to have a better understanding. And I think that at the level of our state, it's important to raise these issues in the Ramstein coalition, because we have different coalitions which form the Ramstein coalition, air defense coalitions, and others, but maybe we will need a coalition of the states which will be able to strengthen the policy against tighter sanctions. And thank you very much. And today there are lots of people, and it seems to me that we were recently in Copenhagen, and the sanctions experts who deal with them nearly 20 years, they told us they couldn't have imagined all the sanctions measures 5 years ago, and now we can see this, and it is a pleasant thing. Yes, we form the Economic Security Council of Ukraine, and we dedicated Russians access to machines, and we believe that these machines are the weak point of Russia, and the production of the majority of Russian weapons depends on the Western-made machines, CNC machines, because Russia is not able to produce these machines on their own, and it imported them before the full-scale invasion from Western countries, predominantly from Germany and Japan, Taiwan, South Korea, and other EU members, Great Britain, the USA, but in 2023, at last, 2 years after the full-scale invasion, we saw a lot of steps from Great Britain, from the USA, on prohibitions on provision of machines to Russia, and it was very efficient. And we saw when Chinese banks blocked the provision of CNC machines to Russia, but now it is understandable that Russia refocuses in the direction of China as the major supplier, and the problem lies in the fact that those are not Chinese machines which are provided to Russia, and the essence of the Chinese issue consists of different aspects, because it is understandable that it is impossible to block the deliveries from China. And according to our data concerning CNC machines, there is the issue of provision of machines from the West, from different shell companies. So the classical scheme of sanction circumvention, but there are two more interesting aspects: the provisions of machines of Western brands which are produced in Chinese. Those belong to Western companies, but they are produced in China. And I think that we will reveal the names of the companies when we verify all the data. And now we have such instances of German companies, and all of them have at least 1 or 4 plants in China. And another problem related to China, which is also linked with the USA, this is the delivery of Chinese machines. They are manufactured in China, and when they make their way into Russia, we can see that they contain American components, or German components, or Taiwan components, and the cooperation is still underway. We are delving deeper into this topic, and now we can see that the problem lies not only in the computer inside the machine. Some of the Chinese manufacturers which cooperate with Russia, they have their centers in Germany, and during the full-scale invasion, they are making agreements on purchase of these machines, and all of these are American, German hardware, their software. All of this is going to China and then is delivered to Russian Federation, to the military production which produce fighter jets, electronics, and so on and so forth. So there are several components, but today we have heard the message about the pressure on these companies. We have the companies which manufacture these components, and yes, we also agree on provision of guidance recommendations to these companies. We have to maintain the dialogue. But today we also mentioned the sanctions of the USA. Of today, we can see other steps, and the results of the American sanctions shows that if banks, they have a lot of risks, they feel a lot of risks because of sanctions, they feel that they can be held accountable, then they comply better with regulations. And if the compliance is stricter, they hold their export or reduce it. But the regulation of banking sphere field is a classical direction for the USA. And as for the sector of manufacturers and distributors, we do not see such strict prohibitions. and maybe we can provide recommendations for China, and this is not the major supplier, but we also have Turkey, countries of the Central Asia. There are a lot of third countries. That's why corporate compliance should be introduced at the national level with all the necessary standards, with the responsibility for violation of these standards is the universal, versatile component tool that we lack now. Yes, some companies, they have their statements, arguments that small and medium-sized businesses lack funds to introduce compliance, and some big manufacturers, they talk about the loss of outlets, about loss of clients, but in the we think that this is the question to their governments, and we already heard from the Taiwan government about the grants for the technical assistance for small and medium businesses, and this is the direction for business to follow. And now we have to understand that we will have to do that. Compliance measures have to be stricter and tighter. And I hope that we will see a lot of provisions on corporate compliance. And we can see that these steps, they are great, but there are a lot of gaps, and we understand that we cannot provide all the standards in the sanctions package. That is why we have to link sanctions with non-sanction legislation. That's why the new directive on corporate resilience and due diligence was adopted. Those are the standards of the corporate compliance in the European Union, and there is nothing about dual-use goods, and the directive is focused on the environmental issues and human rights violation. Those are important issues, but we understand which issue, which problem is more important. And in these directives, we do not see any changes on the provision of such goods. So the problem, the issue of the third countries intermediaries is important. And we deem it to be really important. Thank you very much, Denise. We will wait for your report on China as the biggest supplier for Russia, and it is important. It should motivate the Western countries so that you remember our Western partners told that when Northern Korea provides ballistic missiles, they will cross the red line and we will help Ukraine then. But we have to work more quickly and eliminate the negative experience. And now I would like to give the floor to Olena Belousova, strategy consultant at Kyiv School of Economics. You have also analyzed the sanctions policy and the provision of components. Can you please provide us with your findings? Because it is important to understand how to make the sanctions policy effective. I will not criticize it because during 10 years of Russian aggression, we can even compose different works. And from one hand, we are happy that sanctions are introduced. But from the other hand, in order to bring Russia's defeat closer, they are not sufficient. That is why we are talking about the complete economic isolation of Russia with the seizure of their assets. Thank you very much. Thank you very much thank you to my colleagues for the work they have been doing, and we can see that our findings and our recommendations, they are similar, and it is important to hit one point together, and we believe that putting pressure on this, we will be able to resolve a lot of issues. And thank you. I would like to thank NAKO and their report for their work on the foreign-made components in Russian fighter jets, and I haven't seen such a detailization before, and your experience is really great, and I do like it. Your work is unique. As for our conclusions, in our reports, we were trying to provide a full picture in order to understand the overall dynamics so that we can see how sanctions work when the pressure is bigger or lower, and so on and so forth. And what we have seen is after the imposition of sanctions in 2022, we have seen a big decrease in trade in critical components, but after that we saw the increase of these numbers, and in August 2023 we saw that Russian import was back on its track. And it is important to understand from the perspective of sanction-related issues. And when we say that sanctions work or do not work, we should understand that there is no such a sanction that we have imposed, and we will see that it will work for the whole time or always. And Russia has this experience maybe from the Cold War. They are trying to search for these components. They are trying to involve in illicit trade, and we understand that there will be a way that Russia will be able to forge. And at the beginning of the full-scale invasion, these 6 months is the term when sanctions work, and we have to make them work more quickly and introduce new measures. It is important to understand for our own expectations, and when we recommend and when we saw an effective step which was introduced and made, for example, the sanctions that we saw today, we have to think about our next step, because we have to understand that any sanctions, they will work for a period of time. As for our findings and conclusions, we have analyzed 2 sets of products. The first set of products is the official classification of the high priority items, which contains 50 codes, and according to it, we saw that if we compare monthly deliveries before the full-scale invasion and monthly deliveries after the reuptake of the Russian imports, we do not see any serious change in the dynamics, in the monthly dynamics of these deliveries. In our report, we presented the figure of 9, but it is related to the fact that the recent 2 months the budgets are used, and bigger procurement was made, and we can see that these 50 items do not represent positive dynamics, but we should understand that this classification was adopted in 2023 in the middle of the year, and a lot of products were added during 2023, and some of them were added in February 2023. It is not very correct to compare with the very beginning, because in fact a lot of products were added later, and the regulations started to work later correspondingly. And in our report, we were trying to analyze this set of products which we consider have to be sanctioned and which reflect the products which can be used by Russia for their military industrial base for construction of military weapons. And on the basis of Ahiia's work in terms of sanctions and on our vision and understanding of the components which are low-tech or high-tech, we were trying to detail the list of products. And if you look at this list of products, we can see a better dynamics. So if we compare the volume of the trade before the full-scale invasion and after the uptake of these volumes, then now we can see as of the end of 2023, we have the decrease of 7% in monetary form. It should be noted that if we can see the monetary reflection, we have to take into account the higher prices fact, which can be considerable, especially in the companies which are major and the most important, and we can notice their components in Russian weaponry. And we have analyzed two companies which are present in your report, Texas and the other one, and we see the increase in price in two times before, compared to that price that was before the full-scale invasion, especially for the components which are the most important. And this is one of the effects that sanctions have, that Russia has to pay more for these products. But this, on the other hand, forms an additional risk, because if Russia is willing to pay higher for these products, then correspondingly intermediaries will be willing to cooperate with them. And in this way, the work which is being done on the regulation of internal processes of the companies is very important, and all the colleagues support this idea, and we are trying to work in this direction as well, so that the regulation of the internal processes of the company is compulsory. Thank you very much. And now I'm giving the floor to Vladyslav Vlasiuk, advisor to the head of the President's Office, secretary of the Yermak-McFaul International Sanctions Group. And for us, it is very important to hear what steps are taken at the level of the state, at the level of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, will be taken, because all the work that our think tanks have are to be converted into tools, sanction tools. Thank you, Vladislav, that you are with us today, and we would like to hear your vision from the President's Office, from your task force on sanctions. And please, you have the floor. Thank you, colleagues, that you have invited me. I'm sorry that I'm online, but I have come down with an illness. It's a great idea to have such a great analytical work on components and the electronics in Russian fighters is just a part of our research that we have conducted with our partners, and we have a good sanctions task force, and it is very important, as Valery Lobanovsky put it. Our team is star, and no one has the leading role, because everyone complements each other. And speaking of microelectronics, I would like to thank our intelligence officers, our special forces officers, because the way they procure this data, without them it would be impossible. And yesterday we received the piece of Russian weapon, of a chemical weapon, and it was recovered in the Kharkiv direction, and the intelligence officers managed to recover it under shelling, And so they tried hard to recover this thing, which will matter for our sanctions related efforts. We should remember this, that they pay the high price in order to recover it. So the role of everyone is distinct and understandable. And what we managed to do is we managed to convince our partners and provide them with sufficient information and evidence. And third of all, sometimes we even manage to put pressure on our partners so that they can impose these or that sanctions. And it is also important to praise our partners, to thank them and their governments, because they are also under pressure, because some sanctions also impact their national economies. And the fact that our partners do a lot also harms their own economy, and we should understand and respect it. As for our plans, they are very simple. Yesterday and today and tomorrow, we will have the publications of sanction packages, and I think that the European Union will also adopt this package, and we will see the results of our joint work on microelectronics, on software, on energy, on finance sector, on individual sanctions, and so on and so forth. And then we will have a pause for months or two. It does not mean that we will stop our work. No, I will go to the. I will meet with our colleagues with who we exchange the materials and incentivize to work further. And in several months, during these months, we will have enough time. We will have time to gather new ideas from different communities, new evidence for further sanctions packages. And in September, there will be a sanctions forum in Brussels. And I think that at that moment, we will be able to present high quality products. As according to McFaul, he always provides this example with the fine until the car is parked in a wrong way. The same goes for Russian Federation. It has to be sanctioned more and more. And this is what we are doing. We are continuing our work. Our special operations officers, our intelligence officers continue their work, and I hope that Olena and her colleagues will continue their work as well. Thank you, Vladyslav. Get well soon. And I would like to add, unless the Russian aggression is going on, the genocide against Ukraine is going on, the sanctions policy has to be strengthened. And I would say, unless Russia has paid reparations to Ukraine, they have to understand that sanctions policy has to be that leverage that Russia has to understand, and this will show that they mustn't launch offensives on Ukraine. And I would like to thank our intelligence officials, our intelligence officers, our militaries who are fighting on the front lines and trying to recover the evidence, especially the evidence on the usage of the nuclear weapons. And we have enough of it, and even without waiting for the summit in Brussels, so we can use every opportunity, because the usage of the chemical weapons poses the risks of death for Ukraine. And we will wait for this evidence to be delivered to our partners, which will be used during the tribunal for war crimes, for crimes against humanity, for ecocides. Thank you, Vladyslav. And now, dear colleagues, after such great research, after such great presentations, we can ask and answer the questions. Please introduce yourself. I can see a sea of hands. Yes, Maria Berlinska, the representative of the Foundation Dignities of the volunteer community, which train drone operators and make a lot of effort to support our front lines. And dear colleagues, journalists, we are waiting for your questions. I decided to play more time for the journalists. I would like to thank you for your serious work, and I think that we have a lot of information, because one thing is to know that there are foreign-made components in fighter jets, in aviation, in naval drones, in electronic warfare, in air defenses, everywhere. All Russian weaponry has Western-made components. One thing is to know about that, and other thing is the investigation. And it is one thing when you provided your research and findings, and I hope that our lawmakers, decision makers, stakeholders, the authorities will work with the Western countries. And I would like to thank you for your tremendous work, to all your team. I think that you have provided a very powerful tool for our society. And my question is, could you tell us, please, do you see the mechanisms of potential further responsibility of the countries which carry on delivering components to Russia? Because very often we say that they did not stop their activity in 2014, but they should have stopped it after 2022. And for example, the thermal imaging cameras that were used by Russia, they were used to kill our people. And my question is, do you have any prospect of the mechanism of holding these companies and countries accountable who carry on their business, doing their business with Russian? Will they be held accountable? Because if we say that this company delivers these tools to Russia, and another thing is when this company understands that their leaders will be imprisoned and they will be regarded as sponsors of terrorism. We can use different definitions, and just one of the mechanisms, let's keep it between us. I was told by our colleagues, it was during one of the international visits, is to block legal entities of the Russian network, which includes hundreds of companies across the world. And for example, Mr. Radley, who in fact is Mr. Ivanov and lives under disguise for 10 years in Belgium and delivers components to Russia through third countries. And if we deal and investigate this network, and this network constitutes hundreds of such entities, which works very effectively, and the list of these companies, they are known. And when when their actions are revealed, they will forge a new network. But during this, we will be able to play for time. We will win more time. And I would have never thought that Western technologies would kill Ukraine. Thank you very much, Maria. Vladislava, if you're still with us, if you're ready, you can provide your answer because Olena is ready to answer. And dear, if you're ready, yes, we can start. Let's start with Olena. I cannot provide a full answer to this question because it is difficult. There are no legal mechanisms which we can use to hold the leaders of the companies accountable. I can see the mechanisms for sanctions violations, for example, financial punishments, penalties when they pay fines for non-compliance, because when they import the products, when they export dual-use products, it is not about criminal responsibility, but we also have positive news because in our report we had one American company whose components were under export control, and now American law enforcement bodies launched a lawsuit against this company. Of course, I agree with the idea that those law enforcement bodies have to work more quickly because in our previous report, when we provided information about shaheeds, that law enforcement bodies initiated a case against one American entity about those agents that Maria has just mentioned, because those people, they are not just Russians, because people from different nationalities work for Russia and with Russia, Americans as well, and they have launched a prejudicial process, and they learned about this from our report, and for us it was a bit strange. But now this process is better and more people are involved in this, and I think that this public dialogue is important and is needed. And we are sort of neutral observers, a think tank which can provide assessment on how efficiently they work and how they implement all the promises that were pledged by their leaders. And yes, we can see that Russia bears higher costs. It is more expensive for it to import these products, but it still continues to do so. And to me, in my opinion, this is a complex question, and I would like to say that our colleagues have already mentioned, and the representatives of our authorities, they mentioned about our high quality work. And it's Victoria Vishnivska was studying everything. And our leader had Svetlana Musiyaka. We are ready to carry on our work. And we are willing, and we understand why we are doing this, because we are very grateful to our militaries, to our intelligence officers, because we don't even imagine what price they pay for our victory. Thank you, dear colleagues. A brief remark. The most important thing that we have learned during these 2 years of sanctions related activities is that there is nothing impossible. Everything can be implemented if we work well and efficiently. Thank you very much, dear colleagues who are with us in this room. I can see a lot of our like-minded people, for example, Daria Kalenyuk and the International Center for Ukrainian Victory. And yes, hello, my name is Larisa Zubenka, the TV channel Freedom. You have said that it is often the case that for example, some companies are sanctioned by Great Britain and some of them are not sanctioned by the US. And what do you think? Is it about the negligence, about the human error, or is it a deliberate concealment of Russian schemes? No, it is not deliberate. This is just the failure of the Western world to deal with this problem. As of now, the coordination between the countries is much better than before. And the problem used to lie in the fact that Ahiia has raised this issue that uh, every country is not able to work with this because every country has some information. And these countries, they have to be they have to be together. They have to have a coordination platform where they can exchange data in real time and make their decisions quickly, because the circumvention of sanctions is done this way. One country sanctioned Russia, they moved to another one. And in order to eliminate this, all of these countries have to be together and make quick decisions, but they are not used to working this. And what is the organ that they are going to carry on their work with? And now they are trying to create this. This is the weaponized globalization. This is our world where we created free markets, and now just to close it and go back 2 years before, it's just impossible. Speaking of the ability to work together, I would provide an example. You know, when, for example, the bank was robbed, the police came, the police was investigating the crime, and there are some cases where when you can see everything, when the bank is being robbed by robbers, they are threatening you with a gun. And if we are talking about sanctions, we have no mechanism on what we have to do when your bank is robbed now. When you come and everything is robbed, you prepare the documents and all of that. Our experts work on this, but what should you do when the machine, for example, CNC machine is being provided to Russia, or gas turbine units are being provided to Russia? You know that it has been underway, but you have no answer. And what should you do when Russia procures some other hardware? Where should we seek assistance from? And this is a very simple example, but in fact, such examples are numerous. And our challenge, we will face even bigger challenge, because all of us can see how much open data information in Iran, for example. This is Russia's future. This is the matter. This isn't even the matter of years. And the more data we will have, the less we will rely on open source intelligence, and more we will have humans. And it means that we have to learn how to cooperate with one another, how to trust each other, how to exchange data, because trying to recover data will be more difficult and more difficult. and the sanctions Ramstein or sanctions coalition sanctions team. We can name it in different ways, but it would be great if our partners cooperate with us in one space. Dear journalists, dear representatives of the embassies, are there any other questions? Vladyslav, do you have any other additional remarks? Not a remark, but a short announcement. And Great Britain has just announced the sanctions package. Yes, we have more great news now, and I think that during these 11 years of Russian aggression, the West should have drawn conclusions from its own sanctions policy, because given the increase in the threats, and it's not just about Russia, but also about North Korea and China, we have to understand that whether these sanctions are an effective tool in order to prevent all of this. And I can say that China's ambitions, they are big, and the inefficiency or the inefficient ability of sanctions policy incentivizes them, because they understand that it's not enough, and we have to prevent this. This is the key conclusion. We have heard the official statements of the leaders from Russian Federation about their, and we can also hear about the confrontation of the West and Russia being inevitable, and we understand that we have to prevent their access to Russian access. Mikhailo Dutsenko, American Ukrainian Business Council. And speaking of what you have just said, everything is simple. We have just to know the Ukraine's and partners' plans about the memorandums, about the exchange of intelligence, because now it blocks the work. And we have to exchange the data, and we will stay the course. Thank you very much. I think that Ahiia and Vladyslav will comment on this, because from one hand, we are happy about the signing of security agreements, which are not security guarantees, but which help to make the cooperation deeper in different sectors. For example, on searching for fair ways and how to punish the aggressor. Could you please comment? Yes. This is a good question, because every security agreement contains a provision on the cooperation in media space concerning the exchange of intelligence data, on cooperation of counteractions on misinformation, the exchange of military data, and today the USA and Japan, there are planned the signature of security agreements. And I guess that the question of this is resolved by signing these agreements. And there is the person who deals with this work, Mr. Vlasiuk. So the task is to follow up every security agreement with our partners and provide the implementation. So the work is underway. We have to communicate with Mr. Vlasiuk and to see where we stand on in terms of the implementation. And I meant more practical side of the communication, because we can look at the 27 members of the European Union. They have these agreements, but there is no such efficient data exchange, and there are different reasons to it, and we will not discuss them now, but the effective mechanism where we will be able to do that, not just from the legal perspective, but from the practical understanding. It is important to understand this. And for example, air defense systems, when we were conveying this data, we have to create this. And if this can be different public platforms, state platforms, or virtual platforms, these mechanisms, they have to work effectively. Dear colleagues, do we have any other questions in the room? If no, then we have presented our research, and we are on the schedule, and we wanted very much these security agreements to lay the groundwork for Ukraine's accession to NATO. And when we are told not to be ambitious and not to demand the formal invitation, but in Japan, in one of the biggest and most powerful think tank, we were asked the question, what would you like the Prime Minister of Japan to convey at the NATO summit? Because you remember that they understand how important it is for Ukraine to exceed the NATO, because Ukraine will make NATO the global player in terms of deterrent measures. And you can see that for Japan and for North Korea, for Australia, taking into account that they can see how much the military cooperation between the Russian Federation, China, Iran, Northern Korea gains momentum, and this is about the cooperation in strategic fields, the NATO will not have another decision. Maybe we will have to knock at the door for a longer time, but all the work that our representatives of think tanks have made is very important, is a big contribution to prevention of some new tensions and struggles. And from the other side, it is very important on our journey to our victory, and Ukraine has a unique combat experience of working with robotics, and it is very important for this research, for these findings to be laid on the table of the lawmakers, which will enable them to make quicker decisions. And when there is bureaucracy, we have to pay for this with our lives. I am grateful to Olena, Svetlana, and to all the team from NAKO, to all the people who worked on this report, to Vladyslav, to Ahiia, to Denise, Hutek, for being here today with us. And our sanctions team has to be equal to our state's team, which will bring closer our victory. Thank you very much. And we will also have informal communication. Thank you very much, Anna, for your support.